What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're continuing on with the 180 build. Don't mind the shit you can hear in the back, which actually is shit.
Literally.
My sewage tank got blocked. Too much information. But anyway, we've got a tube front end going on this thing. We're gonna get straight into it. Alrighty, so Mitch and I are going to be punching on this today. This is a full kit from Lead Run Motorsport. So we've got a rear lift bar, which is simple to put on, but the front is a ton of work. So we're going to cut literally the whole front of the car off. And then the idea of doing the tube front end, because we're doing that engine conversion, we can make our own hangers and stuff for radiators, intercoolers, all that kind of stuff. So pretty exciting stuff, eh? Just
all the nice looking bits.
There's a bit to do. It looks like a kit, but it's not really. A lot of this is supplied extended, so we do need to cut it back to suit the car because a lot of these old S chassis are not straight, whether they're not straight for factory or they've been crashed a few times. Yeah. That's probably my fault. I'm learning to drift. Deal with it. All right, let's get into cutting and see how she fits up.
Half an inch.
What are you doing? I'm over here.
Oh, the front fell off.
Oh, there goes all, that's called rust removal right there. Right, I've put up these plates. We've had to trim them back a bit. They're all supplied, but just different angles. So we're gonna put a plate here. This is for the, oh, what do they call it? It's basically like the torsion bars, tension bars. Anyway, this holds the structure of the chassis back to the body here on the strut tower. So we're gonna weld a plate there. This is actually gonna be like a sandwich plate join. Another piece on the front here, and then you basically run a nut and bolt through there so this whole front clip can be removable. Down on the chassis rail, there's another bit here that I've trimmed back, and this whole front section pretty much gets boxed in. Obviously, being a folded chassis C-channel, with this grinding back, you're going to cut back the weld where it joins, so we're going to run a bit of angle iron to strengthen that again. All this gets boxed in and then a few tacks along there to rejoin the rail together. But we'll basically get this crush tube on to strengthen the width of the rail before we pull that radiator support out, because that's the next bit to come out and you don't want the thing flopping around. At this stage, you don't want to move the car or anything either. Leave it on the ground, don't put it on the hoist because things can start moving because it's got no strength. So that's the next stage, weld her up. Obviously, everything's cut oversized. Like I said at the start, they can't supply these kits for the car because every car is slightly different. So the top cut's not too bad. You just got to trim it back and get the angle right. But this bottom one, it's like a full, like hectic angle cut, which I don't even think my bandsaw can go to that angle. So it might be a grinder job. But I did watch there is a sort of instructional video the guys from Lead Run have supplied when you get this kit, and they literally say it's a bit of trial and error to try and get this as close as you can to weld onto that plate, and then you do that one last because it's an easy flush cut. So start with that, Mitchy boy, and we'll see how we're looking. Alrighty, so we've spent a bit of time getting this sorted. We ended up putting some angle iron on the chassis. Mitch did that. Oh, actually, I did a bit of the welding. Anyway, we strengthened that because it's that thin C channel. It's not the worst thing in the world to add a bit of strengthening there. These side tubes are on now. They're pretty rigid, like it's fully tacked. So it's safe now to remove this center cross member with the radiator support and actually put the tube on in, which is this one here. But again, it's oversized, so there'll be a bit of trimming to do. A bit of fiddling around. We basically box in this section, put that support in, and then weld some tabs for the caster arms and that to go back onto. So I'm just gonna nut away at that, probably fully weld all this, it's good to go now. I'm not gonna film a heap of it, so we'll smash this out and then we'll get onto the really nitty gritty bit where we start putting this front bar on, and it basically bolts on like that. So just a heap more cutting and welding, gotta love it. Alrighty, so we're looking like we've made a ton more progress. Most of this is tacked up now, nothing's fully welded. It's been a lot of cutting, grinding, heaps of measuring, a lot of redos, but it's the most meticulous thing I've done. I mean, this thing's got to be straight for everything to be able to mount up properly. Normally I just bush mechanic shit together, but this has been one of those times that I've gone forwards and backwards and spent the time to get it pretty damn close. The car isn't straight, it's had a few hits, the chassis rails aren't straight, so I was trying to just get it as square as we can so when we do mount coolers in here, they're not on the piss too much. But I'm at the point now where the tube's kind of mounted, it is removable, so I'm gonna take that off and fully weld all these box sections in here. Get all this welded up properly so it's nice and sturdy. I've got to drill and tap some holes in here for this to go on, and then this is basically a removable section. I can go and fully weld all these joints here. I'm having some dramas with these caster arms. They're kind of on the piss a bit, so before I go and weld this radiator support in, I just want to make sure that they're straight, whether I replace them with new ones or just loosen them and see if there's any movement in there. I'm not really sure. All right, it's actually been a few days, or actually a couple of weeks since I've done some filming on the drift car. Now what we've done is pretty much mocked up a lot of where the body kit's gonna go. So I got a heap of stuff from Lead Run Motorsport, some new guards, new bonnet, new bumper, and we've gone through and basically put this front crush tube on and just starting to work out where things are gonna get mounted. Mitch has gone through and added some mounts for the guards there, which is cool. It's really a lot of nitty gritty stuff happening, so I'm not filming too much, but just a quick update. The next thing you'll see is probably when that's all done, and it comes time to start mounting coolers and probably drop the motor in. So progress is happening, but it's just going a bit slow, but it's definitely looking sick. All right, I have no idea where I got up to with this, so I'm just gonna start rolling with it. We were at the sump. The sump was the biggest headache of my life. I got a new one of the aftermarket ones, hoping it would fit, and it didn't. So I sent it down to the boys at Simply Tuning. Is it Brock? Leeson Engineering?
And Leeson Engineering.
Yep, so Pecky gave me that hookup. And who?
Dan Barker.
Max over there. Turns out they had to even modify it further. So now it's got a custom pickup and they've modified the sump and it's finally on. I've stuck it on the motor, so now I can start moving on. What I'm doing today, PRP, Platinum Racing products. This is quite important. If you've got an RB motor, they don't rev a lot. The timing triggers in them are pretty poor, piss poor. So because I'm gonna be using a Haltech, you need a new trigger kit so the ECU can kind of keep up with the speed of the motor, and you should be able to get up to like 8,000–9,000 RPM. So that's what I'm doing now. Got to pull the crank gear off, get the pulley off, put a new trigger pulley, what do you call it, just spinny thing on. So whack that on, new timing sensor, and then another one for the cam, and then the trigger kit will be sorted, and then I'm hopefully can start actually putting on like the turbo, manifold, intake, all that good stuff. So that's what we're doing today. I like your shoes. Woo!
And what happened?
Safety.
You use up all your bolts?
Yeah, they all got used on a car. We all know crank bolts are really effing tight.
Wait, do we push it or pull on?
Yeah, pull your weight.
Oh my.
Oh my God. Fuck no. I'm gonna have to get a different tool. I think I've got a longer crank pulley somewhere. What? All right, so now I'm actually putting the crank sensor in. Again, you got to do some more cutting. So that there, you need to cut a section out, and then the little sensor goes through there, and then it hits the gear here. So we need to trim out, I don't know, how much of it? Just go big or go home. How that? Where's that go?
You just want to twist and tape? Or
Just twist and tape?
that's where it goes.
Actually is.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Is it?
He's unsure. Is it? I'm not gonna lie, that was a little bit of a learning curve experience there. The crank was easy. Oh, shut up in the background.
Oh, sorry.
Bloody hell. What? But the cam was a bit different. So I've kind of put it together what I think, and it hasn't really lined up. So I'm gonna leave, at least you can access that pretty easy. I'll leave it up to the tuner because the crank sensor isn't really lining up with that trigger, and it's fully like maxed out on its adjustment. So that's the way the assembly goes, I'm pretty sure, but it's just getting the right adjustment. You can undo these bolts and kind of rotate it around. And I gotta keep reminding myself, because I haven't done it for a long time, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That's what I did for the first half of this whole channel, and then I just got real lazy. So as mentioned earlier, we're going for 1 billion subscribers by the end of this year. So make sure you subscribe. Is that enough? 2 billion. All right, the time has finally come. I found a gasket. It's already on the motor because I got that excited, but we can finally put turbo and manifold on. Manifold, just gone for a 6 boost, got that from Golby's, shipped it overnight, which is amazing, but now it's sat here because I've been waiting on other stuff. Connected to that, I've gone Garrett again, the same sort of turbo. We've run along on the 80 Duramax. This is a G3770, I believe, with a 0.83 AR ratio housing. So it should spool up pretty good. It's a 2.5 litre motor, so it's got a bit of flow, and it should be sweet to hit that 450 horsepower mark. So gonna whack that on. Everything's V-bands as usual. V-band manifold, we'll get that on the motor, and then there's a brand new product from Garrett, actually pretty exciting, their external gate. I need a weld on a housing for that, and that will take us through for the rest of the day, I reckon. So get the turbo on, and then we can start looking at oil feeds, water feeds, getting everything hooked up around it. What are you doing? Right, so exhaust bolts. Turns out I didn't get brand new nuts with this, and just like most things, wheel studs. Axle! Exhausts get hot and they seize up, so I'm gonna use some anti-seize. Newell and do a wicked one here, and there's actually a photo of an exhaust pipe on the packet, so it must be exactly what it's for. Just dab a little of that on each of the studs as you put it on, and then it means next time it won't be so hard to get off. 2 of them were rusted on, and I had to like whack them in a vise to undo them. So a little bit of anti-seize goes a long way when you're doing things like exhaust manifolds. Right, now that the turbo's on, I've gone ahead and used a bunch of the Raceworks fittings. Now, Raceworks fittings are like the AN performance fittings. They're really good for like oil, water, fuel. They can handle any sort of fluid inside them, and they've got a really quality machined end on them so that they get a perfect seal. So it's the same sort of stuff that I used on the 80 series and the Duramax swap. So we've run the turbo drain and also one of the water lines. I'm waiting on a couple of fittings to finish off the turbo feed, a little banjo fitting off the block, and then a press fitting for the other side to go to a normal barb. But now the next thing, I did tell you that Garrett had a new product, and it is their wastegate. So we've gone for an external wastegate. This is their 45. They got a few different sizes. I think it's like 30 up to like 50 or 60 even. So what I've got to do now is weld on, actually we're going to use this corner piece, weld on this bit of tube onto the header, so then I can weld the V-band fitting onto that header as well, and we can mount the external gate. I've had to make sure that we've got clearance for exhaust. I may be putting the screamer out the bonnet. I'm not sure yet whether it's going to just shoot down or come out the bonnet. So we'll get this sort of mocked up, run some beans with the TIG welder and TIG this fitting on, and then the exhaust should be finished. I'm hoping I can do it on the engine instead of having to pull that manifold off again, and then we can mount this thing up, and it's pretty much turbo plumbed. Ow! Don't bite my feet! Ow! Oh shit. All right, so this is pretty exciting. We've got the, your teeth are so sharp. Come here. Inside. Oh, here mate. Alrighty, so we've got the turbo on and we've also put that external gate on. Pretty tricky to weld around the back with the TIG, but we managed to sort of get it done. I don't think there'll be any leaks, which is good. What I'm gonna do now is start looking at the Haltech. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, we're gonna be doing the Haltech. So this is pretty sweet actually. What they've done, because it's a popular motor, this is a proper Elite 2500 ECU, but it's for the twin cam RB motor. So it's pretty much kind of pre-done, which is sweet. Like a lot of these sensors, injectors are good to go, some of the factory sensors, and then you got your normal outputs. So with those sort of outputs, I need to work out where to put like NOx sensor, oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel rail pressure, any of that kind of stuff. So what I'm gonna do now is mock that up. There's a fuse box that goes inside the car. This is the loom that goes through the firewall, and the rest of it should just marry up with this. This little doobie Dicky Watsit was from Haltech as well. So they match up to the coil packs. I've gone individual coil packs. That'll plug in, and then it's pretty much a case of basically removing these old NOx sensors and replacing them with the Haltech ones. Probably put a temp sensor in there, maybe get some oil pressure from somewhere, who knows.
I'll tell you what, it starts getting a little bit more exciting with the build when the motor's ready to go into the car. But that's gonna happen next week. We mock it up, start plumbing up the coolers, intercooler, all that good stuff. We'll see you there.